Hey everybody, Bob Adams. It is the 7th of April, 2022. This is a follow-up in our series for Max Plan's members. I'm very grateful everybody took the time to be here with us this evening. As I stated in the emails that we sent out, we have a very special presentation tonight because we're kind of getting down to the end of all the different things that Max Plans can do. And I was just wanting to wind up everybody, get everybody clear on exactly what they can do, how it's going to work, the functioning of everything. For those of you who have been working on finalizing your CRUT, just so you'll know, I did 20 of them today. We're moving this thing along very, very quickly. So as you get those reminders to complete your CRUT, complete your Roth, just follow up on them, okay? Because we really need to get these things done and ready to rock. But I've had a lot of questions about when it comes down to exchanging our IQD that's sitting in our Precious Metal Roth. And even though I've had the blessing of working with Bob now for several years, and we've had some great conversations, I wanted to bring him on board tonight, just kind of explain exactly what the vaulting service is like over there, what they do, what they're licensed to do, all that kind of fun stuff, and then how the process is going to work when we make this thing happen. So Bob, just first of all, just tell us a little bit about the vaulting service. How long has it been there, and what is it licensed to do, and what do you do, and all that kind of fun stuff.
Sure. Well, I appreciate you having me here. We've been in business. Idaho Armored Vaults is the company. Our website, goldsilvervault.com. You could go to check us out. We've been basically in business since 2008. Our facility went into full-blown operation in 2010. We do a lot of mainly more precious metals. We do physical foreign currencies. We do collectibles, store collectibles, fine art, jewelry, that type of thing as well. We have safe deposit boxes. We also provide logistical support and services, shipping, as well as via courier. Also, we do armored shipping as well. So it's everything around the physical world. We try to make it easier for the clients so when they have precious assets or valuable assets, they can put them in an insured, segregated type of structure. So everything we do is physically separated from client to client. Nothing's ever commingled. We have a $500 million all-risk insurance policy through Lloyd's of London, and so it allows us to insure everything that we store at the facility. That gives the client the peace of mind, that even if the security was breached or something happened, the insurance is there to back up the value of the asset.
Cool. Now, also, it's licensed as a financial institution of some kind, too. Would you explain that, too?
Well, the vault isn't licensed as a financial institution. I do run I also, my other practice, I run an registered investment advisory practice. And then from that, we buy and sell metals. And then also I manage a hedge fund. So the hedge fund that I manage is physical metals as well. So I wear a number of different hats out there, but the facility itself isn't regulated like a financial institution or trust company. That doesn't really fit under that purview. But we are some of the requirements that the state of Idaho wants us to follow is that we're fully insured, everything's fully segregated, no commingling of assets. We have a disclosure document on our website that you go to the forms page, and there's a disclosure document that you could basically download and take a look, and gives us a little bit more information about ourselves and myself and what we do. But from a standpoint of buying and selling assets versus storing assets, I have two separate companies.
Okay. What are they?
Sorry. The registered investment advisory company is Profits Plus Capital Management. Within that, there's a company, basically a business that does buying and selling of metals. That's called Profits Plus Precious Metals. When it comes time to that does the buying and selling of metals. The currencies, we don't sell currencies to individuals. That's more of a currency dealer. But the state commodity code allows us to buy the currencies back. And so how that kind of intertwines with physical foreign currencies is a client, if they wanted us to, if it's, whether it's a traded currency that banks deal with, we can deliver the currency to the bank. We could actually have the funds transferred into cash, put into the company, my investment advisory company, and then under the instructions of the client, we could then send the funds back to the client via wire transfer or write a check to them, that type of thing. So it's a fairly easy process. I guess that what makes it a little bit more complicated currently for some of the currencies out there, like the Iraqi dinar and so forth, is they're not really traded on an exchange like the euro, the yen, the British pound, and so many banks don't actually make a market for physical dinar, and that's part of this whole, I guess the evolution, that if we see some type of revaluation, that the currency would actually be traded on an exchange very similar to other major currencies out there. And that's where we kind of get into the ability, once that happens and the bank can actually transact in that currency, we can actually deliver the currency down to the bank or to their third-party vaulting company, or ship it to their one of their financial centers for clearing, and then we can actually help the client through that process. And then what would happen is my company would be credited the currency, whatever the exchange rate is, and then we could actually then disperse funds back to the client, or if they wanted to convert to precious metals, they could do something like that. But that's the basic premise.
Okay, cool. All right, so folks, this is what I really wanted to cover this evening. First of all, I want to go over the details of how a precious metal Roth with our IQD actually functions. So since most people on this call probably already have a precious metal Roth, I'm just going to kind of rehearse that for a little tiny bit, and then I'm going to turn over to Bob so he can explain that when the money IQD comes to his place, then this is what he does. So, first of all, to decide whether you're going to do a Roth or not, many of you, most of you, have had a conversation with me. We've taken a look at some options and ideas, and you've decided and determined for yourself that a precious metal Roth with your IQD would be a viable option. Now, alternatively to that, oftentimes I have a conversation that either somebody's too young, they're too old, or they don't qualify, or whatever. You know, there's different reasons why I would discourage people from even considering doing the Roth, but most people, when they do decide that this is what they want to do, they choose the precious metal Roth to do it. Now, there's two choices that we have in our domain to be able to do this. One is with the precious metal Roth through a custodial service, and the other would obviously to be a one-member LLC, still using a custodial service, but being able to do it that way. Now, I personally like the precious metal Roth simply because of the simplicity to it. One of the issues that a lot of people run into when they do a self-directed IRA is they will make a non-qualified purchase / sale / activity, which can jeopardize a lot of things with a lot of penalties and a lot of problems. And so I only encourage people to consider doing the one-member LLC and their own Roth system if they are sophisticated enough to be able to understand all the intricacies to having this type of a setup, the requirements, the maintenance to it, the dispersion to it, all those types of things. So most people, I prefer to stick into the precious metal Roth simply because it's regulated very tightly, okay? There's no way for us to screw it up. There's no way to make a mistake, okay? Everything that goes through the custodial services and goes through the licensed dealers. So just as a real quick rehearsal how the process worked. For those of you who elected to do this, there was a series of forms that need to be completed and submitted to the custodial service for acceptance. Okay? At that time, you paid a fee for the registration of the system. Then you contact a licensed dealer for the IQD and arrange with them to make a purchase. Now, they would send the invoice for that purchase to the custodial service. You would then pay the custodial service. Now, a lot of people ask me, well, gee, Bob, I already got IQD in my hand. Well, that's nice. You can't use it, okay? It just won't work that way. You're going to have to buy new IQD that's based upon the agreements for using the custodial service and using the licensed dealers. Now, can they buy it separately or from individuals? No. It has to be purchased from a licensed entity. Why? Because it eliminates the disqualifications type of exchange. It just takes it out of the question. There is no question. And so for people who have IQD on the hand, I've encouraged you to just consider selling it, and selling it on the open market, selling within our group here, and using those funds to be able to purchase the IQD that's going to come from the dealer. Now, once those funds are sent there, they're going to satisfy that invoice from the dealer, send the funds to them. He's then going to forward those IQD notes from the dealership to the vaulting service. Now, once it gets to the vaulting service, Bob and his crew take it over. Now, Bob, I'm going to step out and let you take it from there.
Sure. Once we receive the currency, we'll actually inventory it, take pictures of it, and then forward the pictures as well as the report not only to the client but also to the IRA custodian. And then the currency, the way it's stored, it's fully segregated, so everybody's currencies are held in their own separate container or folder. It's never commingled in any way. So you'll get back the exact same currency notes that you actually have received. Part of the inventory process that we do is we run the currencies through a counter, and that counter has already been configured and calibrated to do counterfeiting and also other types of sort of verification, I guess you could say, of the currency. So if something gets kicked out, at least we'll know right away. Sometimes, we get some notes. Some clients buy used currencies or pre-used currencies, I guess, so they're beat up a little bit. Sometimes they may not scan originally through it because they maybe have stains on the currency from just normal use, but we'll get alerted to that really quick, and then from there we can at least let the client know that, okay, if we try to rescan it and didn't pass, we can at least let the client know, and then also where it came from, whatever dealer that they're using. They can actually get in touch with the dealer as well, and that way, if we need to exchange the notes back out or have them shipped back out, if the dealer's just going to exchange it for newer notes, that can be done right at the beginning of the storage process, not halfway through it, because then it's just a finger-pointing session. So we try to eliminate any type of discrepancy right off the bat.
Okay, now, just a second, Bob. Let me hop in there. I was hoping you'd bring that up. I didn't have to bring up the question for it, okay, because I didn't know they did this. Okay, they've got their own machines to be able to verify the validity of the notes, so there's no questions about counterfeit. The other thing he's talking about is the damaged notes that can come from using used notes as they come through the system. And I know of people who've had notes that were disqualifiable. They just couldn't read them well enough. And the dealers have just been right on hand to exchange those for new notes or at least readable used notes. So I just want to verify that that's exactly what we've seen so far, and it's worked really great. And all right, your turn, Bob. Go.
Yeah. So once we get through that process, and we try to make it as easy as possible or as simple as possible. So the way the storage agreement basically works is the client fills out the storage agreement, sends it over to the IRA custodian. IRA custodian signs off on it as well. IRA custodian will then put their account number on the storage agreement. We'll actually mirror that account number so everybody's on the same page. So that way, if a client ever calls in, they just give us their own, our IRA account number. We can just pull it up that way as well. And it helps for billing because that way the IRA custodian and us actually speak the same language. But that's pretty much it when it comes to at least storing. On the delivery side, if the client wants to take delivery, let's say they're age 59 and a half, or they have to start making minimum distributions, and you want to take the currency out in kind instead of in cash, you can actually talk to your IRA custodian and request an in-kind distribution, and then there would be a value assigned to that, and then we would just ship out so many notes to the client. So it makes it so the client doesn't have to actually liquidate the notes. They could actually just take physical delivery of that, and then the IRS would just be reported the value of the distribution, not the actual asset itself.
Okay, now guys, this is something I brought up a long time ago. Remember, if you put your IQD notes in, let's just say you're too young. Okay, and it's really interesting. I do have one kid that's 19 years old that opened up a Roth. I mean, this is a kid really planning way far ahead. But let's say you're too young, okay, and or you haven't aged out your Roth yet, and the IQD comes to fruition, and you decide that you need more IQD on hand. This is how you can get that IQD back. So if you want to put it out and put it into a CRUT, that would be a possibility. Okay, this is that system that I was saying it would be able to work for that as well. Okay. Now, I got another option I want to talk about. Bob, is that it? Or is there more on that you want to talk about before I move on?
Yeah, no, that it pretty much hits the main points.
Okay. All right, cool. All right, now I want to talk about when that happens, when the RV comes to fruition. Now, please, folks, I'm going to talk about the CRETs here in a little bit and putting your notes in there, that too, but I want to finish off right now with the Roth. So that moment comes Friday at 3 o'clock, okay, and everything comes out, and you're ready to go, and you're going to move, or you're going to go ahead and exchange your IQD. So from there, there's a process to be done. I'm going to let Bob take it from there.
Yeah, if you do get that type of situation that unfolds, first it'll be a madhouse.
Amen.
I'm sure there'll be a lot of emotions flying all over the place because we've talked to people that have owned this stuff for years. But the main point that most people will be interested at that point is what would be the exchange rate and how much will it cost me to exchange it out. So typically what we would do is we would be in contact with Chase. Because at that point, if it's a traded currency that's well recognized, or I guess it's recognized on an exchange, Chase will actually make a market for it. So at that point, it's a matter of just contacting them, getting a sort of a exchange quote, and then we would actually just refer that back to the client and say this is what the exchange rate would be, and then we would just obviously factor in our costs to try and ship it and insure it, or if we have to transport it and insure it. But we would build all that into that exchange rate. We just no one knows what the exchange rate would be or what the cost would be because it's all based on value. So, but the beautiful thing that we do is because everything is segregated, we'll know the way we account for currencies is we do it by denomination of the note. So, if you have, 10,000 K or 10,000 note dinar, and you have a 150,000 note dinar, we actually break all that out. We can run reports so that way if Chase says, okay, how many notes do you have? We can say, okay, we can give them a total, we can give them a breakout by denomination, or we can break it out by individual as well. It kind of helps with us taking care of that for the client, because another important feature with this is going to be the Know Your Client rule and anti-money laundering. Banks are, if something like this happened and you store the asset at your house, for example, when you go down to your local bank to maybe try and exchange it, that's an over-the-counter sort of transaction. There may be, if it's over $10,000 in cash value, there may be a CTR or currency transaction report that's filed by the bank regarding the client that's exchanging this. But they're also, if there's a lot of people that have these notes and they all go to the bank at once, the bank may just get overwhelmed. And so having more of an organized structure sometimes helps with identifying. The bank doesn't have to do all the know your client type of compliance because we've done that right from the beginning on every client that comes in. Especially if it's in an IRA, it's a very easy thing to do because obviously the IRA custodian has done sort of a know your client type of background, and they have all the client information on themselves or on the client itself. So it would be that's an easier adjustment to make. Plus, it makes the transaction run smoother because the focus isn't on the client; it's on the transaction itself. But that's what makes it a little bit easier from our end, because at this point, then it's just a matter of just turning in notes and exchanging those into dollars, and then if it's done electronically, we would just then wire fund or send the wires out to. If it's to an IRA custodian, we would then send the wires out or payments back out to the IRA custodians if the clients just wanted the cash, or if they did want to convert to metals. Depending on the IRA custodian, they may allow the transaction to take place where we don't have to send funds back to the IRA custodian. We could actually just net them into metals, and then whatever overages we send back to the IRA custodian. So, but it just depends on the situation at that point.
Okay, so when this moment comes, Friday at 3 o'clock, then how do they do it? Do they contact you to say, let's go ahead and do this? And what kind of notes or any kind of they have to have some kind of notification that goes back to the custodial service?
Yeah, if they want to go ahead and convert or exchange, we would just basically write up a invoice showing, okay, this is what the asset is. This is what you're basically selling. When you exchange, you're technically selling the asset, and then that way it's like what they call a sell. Basically a sales invoice. Then you'd fill out a sell direction letter from your IRA custodian telling them or instructing them that you've sold this asset. So you have to give Idle Armored Vaults instructions to go ahead and release this asset to Profits Plus Precious Metals, for example. And then they would send that notice to release the assets, so then we could actually ship it out and we could settle the trade. So it's a little bit more of a step of a process when you have an IRA custodian involved. But basically, that sell direction that you fill out, you'll use the invoice, all that information as inputs into your sell direction letter. You're just giving the IRA custodian direction on what you want to do or what your intent is on the asset itself, and then it allows them to input that information on your account so they can record keep and keep track of what's going on.
Okay, so for clarity's sake, let's just say that it comes to fruition. I contact you, we make the exchange, I notify them, you receive the funds from the exchange. Do the funds have to go back to the custodial service and then distributed to me, or can they come directly from you?
No, if it's in an IRA, they have to go back to the IRA custodian. What you don't want to do is be in receipt of qualified money. Otherwise, it could turn the entire IRA into make it ineligible. Then the entire IRA could be basically a distribution at that point. Yeah. So you want the IRA custodian to be involved in that process.
Yeah. Now, this is where I was telling you folks earlier that if your IQD Roth has not met the qualifications for aging yet, whether you're too young or it hasn't gone to 5 years, but it does come to fruition and you want to make the exchange, you can go ahead and do the exchange. Still underneath the umbrella, it's still a tax-free event. Then you can take those notes and that money, and you can either put it into precious metals, or you can contact the custodial service and say, I'm ready now to do a different type of an IRA or a different type of an investment, and keep that money working. Keep it circulating so it's still making money until the 5-year aging or you hit 59 and a half. So just want you to be aware. Just because it's sitting there doesn't mean it's locked. when this thing comes to fruition and it's bouncing around out there at whatever price it is and you agree to that, it's time to move. Don't let it just ride, because we don't know what it's going to be. We don't know how much it's going to fluctuate. Okay? So that's just something I wanted to add on this thing. So realize that when it does come to fruition, if you're already qualified, the aging's been met, then this is the process you'll do to get it all done. All right? Now, I want to shift gears for just a moment, and I want to talk about CRUTs. Now, the thing I love about the CRUT, obviously, is for outside of the Roth arena, this is the way for people to make a tax-free exchange of their IQD underneath the umbrella of the CRUT, be able to have that invested and or go into an annuity and provide yourself a lifetime of income. Now, the thing that I really like about using the vault, and I want to encourage all of you who have a CRUT to seriously consider the possibility of having the vault hold your IQD. Now, here's the reasons why. As Bob just said, and as I've said, you've all heard it a million times, when this thing comes to fruition, it will be utter chaos. And this is why Tony and I spent so darn much time trying to get everybody ready so we can get you out of that fear-greed mode and take away all of the fear is going to be associated with this crazy thing. It's also why I told you you're going to want to talk to 6 CPAs, 6 attorneys, and 6 financial planners to kind of slow things down a little bit. But I also want to encourage you to seriously consider the idea of taking your IQD and instead of hanging on to it for your CRUT and then facing having to go through the exchange process, because the bank that you choose to do your CRUT at may not be able to do an exchange. Okay? Let's just say you're in a small town. The bank there might be able to handle and facilitate your CRUT bank account, but they don't do the exchange for you. And or maybe in a small town, you don't want to be walking in that door with these IQD to do the exchange. Security becomes an issue. The other thing I like about having it with the vaulting service is that it's insured. Sitting at your house, or bury the can out behind the house somewhere along that line, there's no insurance, so what could happen? The house burns down, a thief finds it, the dog digs it up, whatever it may be. That's no insurance coverage for that particular item. So taking the IQD and creating a private account, which, by the way, I have a private account also set up with Bob, and be able to send your IQD there and know that it's been gone through to make sure that it's not counterfeit, know that it's safely secured in the vaulting services, know that when the moment comes for the exchange, you don't have to worry about it. Okay? They take care of it. Now, the one other item that Bob hasn't mentioned that I want to bring up right quickly is that on the date of the exchange, when he notifies the bank that it's coming in, it freezes the rate on that date. Isn't that correct, Bob?
Yeah, well, depending on what the client, if they make that decision, we can actually lock in a designated exchange rate at that point.
Yep. So having their funds sitting there would actually maybe expedite the whole CRUT process for you, certainly adds a safety feature to it. It takes some of the stress away, which is what Tony and I have been trying to get everybody to do anyway, and make it easier. Now, the other side of it is, how much does it cost? Well, Bob, you want to tell them?
Basically, for storage of currencies, it's $100 a year. So we bill it on a quarterly basis, so it's $25 per quarter.
Yeah, like that's horrible to have that kind of insurance coverage, to have the safety factor put into play, to have somebody that's already got the routing to be able to exchange it and electronically can transmit everything around like it's supposed to be. Now, the one other item that we are going to need if you elect to do this, those for you who have the CRUT, you remember the presentation I said you're going to have this gifting assignment or this assignment document. Okay? One more time, we're going to have a document that states specifically you wish to exchange your being held IQD and to go into this particular account. That's the only way we're going to make sure that we don't have a taxable event. So that particular document, you can use the one that's already available, that's online right now. When you get your CRUT, you're going to get that document. It's already prepared for you anyway. All you do is write in certain numbers, and you can use that same document if you wanted. So we will have some kind of either more information on using that doc, or we'll create one that's going to be similar enough to be able to utilize to be able to do this. So I would encourage you to strongly consider being able to utilize this and to put your crud in there. Now, the next thing people are going to ask, Bob, how do they get their IQD to you?
They can actually, like currently right now, they could just ship it to us. The various methods. Most of the time, people will send it. If you want to insure it yourself, you can actually just have it sent USPS, just U.S. Post Office mail. You could send it in a priority mail envelope, and then you could actually send it registered mail, add registered service to it, and then you could insure it on your end. If it's coming from a lot of times, most of the time, what we see is it's coming from a dealer, and the dealer will just simply send it directly to us rather than sending it to the client. So, if you're just buying it for the first time, just instruct your dealer to actually ship it to us directly.
Okay. All right, cool. Now, one more item. All right, so you're sitting at home, you've got all this IQD. Gee, Bob, I'm not going to do a CRUT. Gee, Bob, I'm too old to do a Roth. Okay? Well, what about the possibility then of considering, one more time, it's only a consideration, of maybe having your IQD sitting in the vaulting service and you have the exchange done by the vaulting service? What would be the benefit? Well, number one, it's still insured, it's secured, it's exchanged, electronically filed or deposited back into your account, and it's a simple process. You're not having to go find somewhere to do it. You're not having to carry your IQD to go somewhere to do it. And just like he was saying, when you go into the bank, if you have more than $10,000, you got extra paperwork you have to fill out. Even the banks may hold your funding on this thing, just to make sure, because they have to go through their own ability to clarify whether there's this counterfeit or not. And so having it go into Bob, it's automatic, already taken care of. So if you're holding IQD and you would consider the possibility of maybe putting it somewhere where it's safe, it's a possibility. It's just an idea, guys. I only throw ideas on the table. You know me. I'm just saying that this is a really, really great way to take some of the pressure off when this thing comes to fruition, so you're not running around like a chicken with your head chopped off. Okay? It just works much easier if you've got something already put in play, just like having your Roth in play, your CRUT in play, and this could be a possibility just for the dinar you've got on hand, just as an idea. Okay. All right, Bob, is there anything that we haven't talked about?
I think we pretty much hit it all. So
I think so too. Okay. All right. Now, folks, I kind of promised Bob that we would keep it short because he only had a little half hour to play with us. Bob, can you answer just a few questions before you go?
Sure.
Okay. All right. So we're going to open the floor now for questions. And just a reminder, you'll hit *6 on your phone or unmute your microphone that's on your computer. It's going to be interesting because you're going to say, "Hi, Bob. I want to ask a question." Which Bob are we talking to? Okay. All right. So, Martha, you jump right on there. I'm going to let you go first. Also, remember, guys, I am recording this, and if I get too many people with too much background, I will mute you. Doesn't mean I don't love you. I just got to make the recording clear. Martha, go ahead.
Thank you, Bob and Bob. Bob Coleman. So, hopefully, when we call in, and there's something to exchange, what information will we need to have when we speak to whomever, other than our name, because we're going to be freaking out?
Yeah. For the most part, we'll to make it easier and I guess a little bit more secure, we can talk on the phone, go through that, but the client, we'll probably ask the client just to send us written instructions, whether it be email or fax or something of that nature, just to get dual confirmation that it's not identity theft and that type of thing. So that way, because a lot of times we'll have your email address on file, because when we send out the inventory in the first place, we'll be emailing the pictures and the report to the client. So if you basically call us up and say, yeah, we want to sell it, and it sounds great, we'll just ask for like an email confirmation, or if we do lock, that would actually be, for the most part, that would be probably the most secure way. And then we'll actually email over the invoice once it's actually converted or sold. We would email basically what you'd be expecting to receive back.
I didn't know if we would need any account number or anything from our custodial service, who obviously has all this information as well.
Yeah, we'll have your email. Well, we mirror the account number of the IRA custodian, so we'll know your account number of your custodial account. But when we create that invoice, we'll put that account number on the invoice as well. That way, when you sign the invoice and send that invoice with your sell direction letter to the IRA custodian, they'll know exactly the asset that they need to tell us to go ahead and release at that point.
Okay, I can see the form for doing this being created in my mind as we're having this conversation. So, guys, I'll have that up for you in the next couple of days, and I'll send you an email and tell you here it is.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Sure.
Good question, Martha. All right, who's next? Guys, this is a rare opportunity to get Bob on the system. I know that he has been swamped. Gold is going through the roof, and the guy doesn't get a chance to even go to bed at night. So, Tina, go ahead.
Bob, this is Kina. Can you hear me?
I can.
Yep.
Okay, thank you to both Bobs for the presentation. Bob Coleman, what number do we call to set up the private account?
Our number is just on our website, so I can give it out if you like. It's 208-468-3600. You could go to our website. There's the account storage account agreement that's on our form section. You could just download that, fill it out, and then just send that directly to us. You don't obviously you won't have an IRA custodian involved or a third party, so that would actually be a lot easier. And then you just deal with us directly.
Okay, now folks, one more time. When we get through tonight, I'll be sending out a link so you'll be able to watch this again at a later time. I will include the links to his website so you'll be able to get this stuff all set up.
Thank you.
You're welcome, Keenan. All right, who's next?
I have a question, Bob.
Yeah, go ahead.
Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. So because all the verification is done there at the vaulting service, would there need to be any re-verification of the currency once the exchange is done?
Depending on the bank and their process, for the most part, the problem with the Iraqi dinar is it's not really a heavily traded currency. It's most people don't buy Iraqi dinar and go to Iraq for their vacation destination. So most banks probably don't even have the machinery to do the check on it. So most likely it'll probably go to either the third party custodian or maybe to a financial center, maybe San Francisco or New York, or that actually has ties with a central bank, so they could actually redeem the currencies back to the bank. Be honest with you, we may even be the hub because we have so much currency. We're one of I think the larger vaults in the country that deals with this. So it may be where Chase just says, okay, you verify it and send it over to the address or the location, so that they can basically just confirm the notes and then do the exchange and then adjust our account that way. So it's a tough currency to figure out because nothing's really happened, and it's not a major currency, so it's not really picked up on a more national level.
Okay. Thank you. That was all I had.
Okay, cool. All right, who's next?
Bob?
Yeah.
Hi, it's Karen Vaughn.
Hi,
yeah,
Karen.
Go ahead, Karen.
Okay, so just a couple of questions. First from Bob Adams. The CRUT. Does this have to be done before the exchange, before the supposed RV?
Are you talking about the completion of the documents for the CRUT?
Yeah.
Yes.
Before the RV?
Yes. Now, the reasoning behind that I explained in a couple other presentations, but the problem that we're running into is we have too many. And when this thing comes to fruition, and we don't know if it's going to have any fluctuation or not, so we're trying to get everybody done and get their correct documents finished before then. And so you should have received some emails, telling you here's how to do your finalization on it, and or encouragement to go to the website and go down to more, then drop down to get or finish your CRUT and complete out the documents there. Now, as soon as you get that done, this is how the process works, just for your own information. It pops up, tells me and Tiffany that we have data now that you're ready to finish it off. So we pick up that data, we drop it into the software that's being utilized to prepare the documents, then we send it on to David. David reviews everything, including the input documents that we used, verifies it, and then sends out an email from him to you with all the finished documents. That way you're not having to wait.
Okay, because I'm just wondering, maybe I could call you. We talk about this another time. If I can just do a personal call.
Yeah,
with you.
Make an appointment with me. You know how to do that.
Yeah. Okay. So Bob Coleman, can you just sort of clarify? I have two accounts too. I have one where I have my Precious Metal Roth. You're the vaulting service for that, and then I also have private IQD that I had on hand that I shipped to you. So how does that work? I'm sort of trying to clarify in my mind now. What would I do? Say the date comes. Do I call your office first before calling? Because there's two positions here. I want to do the IQD on hand, get that exchanged, and then also the IQD that's in my Precious Metal Roth.
Yeah, and that's a good question. When you're selling assets at an IRA, typically you'll actually be dealing with the dealer first, whether it's precious metals or currencies or even the stock market. You'll sell the asset first, lock in the price. You'll get the invoice or confirmation of the sale, and then you'll use that information to fill out the sell direction letter. So the IRA custodian, and you can double check with the IRA custodian for their process of what they need. But in most cases, it's the series is basically you call the dealer or you call us to find out what the price is. We give you a quote. You say, yeah, that sounds great. Let's go ahead and do it. I would lock in the price with the bank, so to speak, and then send you an invoice that shows this is the exchange rate or this is the exchange and this is what your dollars that you'll have after the sale of the currency. We would do the same thing for either a regular account or an IRA. It's just that when the IRA gets involved, you then have to take that invoice and also fill out a form by the IRA company, that sell direction letter, and you just go that extra step. So they then have your instructions of what you're doing with that asset. So then they therefore can send us a distribution or release for that asset. So then we can take it out of the account and we can then forward it to wherever it needs to go.
Okay, so to clarify, we hear that the RV has happened. What's the first phone call I should make? Is it to you, to the dealer?
It would be, well, if you're using us to get a quote, you could certainly call a dealer. You can call around and try and say, okay, because if we have a quote and you just want to double check on that to see if maybe that's the best quote, certainly call the dealers out there. They may probably just publish the price on their website, is my guess, because they'll be overrun. But at least then you can compare the quote that I get to what a dealer's offering. That way you're doing what's best for you. And then if you do go through us, I'll basically have that quote net of any fees. So you'll know exactly what you're going to get at that point with that final quote. We won't do a quote and then said, oh, by the way, we got to charge this, we got to charge insurance, we got to charge transit, all that kind of stuff. We just try to make it as easy as possible right up front. That way you can compare it. Because if you're getting a quote to a dealer, you're probably going to be responsible to ship the product to that dealer, so that's not going to be in the quote that you're getting. And then you also have to insure the package as well. because it'll probably be worth.
Yeah, because I'm saying to lock it in. I guess I'm just trying to clarify to lock it in. Who I call to make the decision I want to get it done. It would be basically you or a dealer or just.
Yeah, I mean, in that regard, we would be acting similar to what a dealer would be doing. So the dealer would, you would be calling them up, just like when you went to buy it, they'll give you a quote on how much the cost is to buy it. Well, they'll just be giving you a cost of how much it is to sell it. But with the dealer, you're going to still have to get the product to them. And that may not be, that's probably not in that quote. It'll be up to you to ship it to them. With us, what we would do is we would build in to the exchange rate. We would build in the cost of what it takes to move that asset from point A to point B and to process that. So it'll make it easier for you to get a net number to then compare to what a dealer would be charging. That way you can kind of compare and contrast across the board. You know, if we're in line, if we're above what other dealers are charging, or if we're below whatever other dealers are charging. But at least you know at that point it's an all-encompassing quote. You don't have any other costs involved with that.
Yeah, I kind of got that. So I guess I would just basically call you.
Yep.
And say, this is what I want to do. Bingo. And then you more or less take care of things from there. Is that it?
Yeah. Yep. And then at that point, once you're good to go, or you want to lock in, and you could just follow up with an email saying, "Hey, I just talked to you. Just feel free to lock. I agree to lock in at that price. We'll actually." At that point, we'll just send you over the invoice with the net amount. And then what we'll do is we'll basically work with the bank at that point to get the logistics side worked out, to get those currency notes where they need to go at that point. So that'll be on our side. We kind of do the heavy lifting on that side.
Okay, so Bob, what happens then is we get an invoice from you specifying this is what we can anticipate the return on this investment is going to be minus the cost. Okay, but just because we got that particular invoice doesn't mean it's been actuated yet. Is that correct?
We'll lock in with the bank. We'll have a process where we can lock in the quote so it's not jumping around on us. So, like, for example, I'm sure if something like this did happen, you'll have some serious volatility in the market. At some point, we have to lock in that price with the bank, and at that point, it's just a matter of if it's 2-day delivery time or however long it takes for settlement purposes to get the currency over to the bank's trading department, whatever it may be. We'll make that logistic adjustment. But to get the price locked in, it'll probably be a phone call to the trading desk and saying, okay, we have X amount of so many notes, denominations, what's the exchange rate on these? And they'll quote us the exchange rate at that point. Then we could just say, okay, lock us in for 500 10K notes, or if it's 1,000 50K notes, whatever the number is.
Okay, so if I called you, I said let's do this. You send me an invoice, okay? Does that mean that we have a completion of an arrangement, so you're going to go ahead and process it and get the exchange done? Or is that something where you hand it to us and we compare it with other people?
If you wanted just to call up, you could call up. I can give you what the exchange rate, the last exchange rate was, and then you can compare that. The problem in our industry, the financial industry, is until you actually lock in a price, you don't know what the final price will be. So what I'm assuming will probably be the case is that the price will be jumping around. So like if I'm on the phone with a client, let's just say they're selling gold, for example, and we're on the phone and I see the price of gold, it's at $1,900 or $1,930 an ounce, and I tell the client we're on the phone, it's about $1,930 an ounce. If I call the wholesaler up 30 seconds later and I lock it in for $1,929, it's just the movement of the market. That's that. That's probably what will ultimately happen with the currencies. If we don't have a fixed exchange rate, if it's a variable exchange rate, it'll be constantly moving. So it may be a moving target. So we may tell the client, depending on what the exchange rate may be, this is what the last trade was. If we then go to call and lock it in, if it's a fast moving market and it changes materially, if it's more than 1% or something of that nature, we can always call the client back and say, okay, the market just moved. It's been very volatile. Do you still want to lock in at this price? And so the hard part with variable rate type currencies that are constantly adjusting is it's a moving target. So you kind of have to treat it just like a stock market, stock moving up and down. You may not get that exact price. It may just be a small smidgen off of that, but at least you have a rough estimate of what to expect.
Okay.
Now, if it's a fixed rate, which is what the currency has been for quite some time,
2 decades.
Yeah, it hasn't really moved. That's pretty easy at that point. If it just simply revalues at a fixed rate, then that's the rate it is, and that's what probably everyone's going to receive. It'll be an easier transaction at that point.
Okay, so let me go back to the question here. I think I understand what Karen's asking you, but I want to make sure I got clarity on it too. I call you. I say, okay, what's the rate? And you say, okay, it's this and this and this. All right? And I say, okay, so that's what I can get by going through you. Now, if I say, let's do that, then that's when the invoice is created?
What I would then is I would lock in with I would call the bank, obviously lock in with them, because we have to sell the currency to them first before I can actually sell it to the client. Because we got to make sure that the currency isn't in a fast market or it's not changing rapidly. So once we lock it in with the bank or the trading desk on their side, then I create the invoice and send the invoice to the client. So because the problem we run into is if I give quotes to the client without locking in the price first, then we're taking on a lot of risk that we're not hedging. And so in order to avoid that extra hedging risk, it's just simply to unload the dinar to a live quote to a good counterparty, which would be a bank.
Okay. All right. Karen, did you get that answer? Is that what you were after?
Kind of, more or less, because I guess I just want clarity on, you said if it's more of a volatile market, at what point do you talk to to the bank, you said, where you get the quote for the number? Would you call me back or contact me and say, look, it's changed to this? When does that happen?
Yeah. In all honesty, I could put you on hold, and then call the bank up, and then they give me a firm quote. I put them on hold. And say, okay, this is what the quote is, and you say yay or nay, and then at that point, I could do it that way, or I could just be calling you right back right after I talk to the bank. Most of the time, currencies don't fluctuate like precious metals do. They're not as volatile, so it's going to be more of a subtle swing. Unless obviously something crazy happens and you get some kind of major revaluation, and then all of a sudden everyone's trying to dump it at the same time, and everyone's just basically overloaded. But the way I kind of envision most of these things, if they happen, it would be there'll be some kind of designated rate that the bank will kind of hold, because the bank's going to be basically hedging their bets, so they're going to have their own spread in it. So they'll have a profit margin that they're working off of. It'll allow them to not have to be as volatile on moment-to-moment movements. That's what I kind of envision happening. So it's not going to be something where, you call me, I call the bank, and all of a sudden we got a 5% adjustment, and then I say, okay, hold on, let me call the client back. If it's as long as it's within, within a percent. If you're selling it for $10,000, for example, and instead of $10,000, it's $9,990 or something like that, or $9,000 $900. I mean, if it's not a gigantic move, and you say, well, as long as we get roughly that price, I'm fine with it. Then I can just go ahead and lock it. If it's something that's constantly moving and very, very volatile, we'll be talking about that right at the get-go. So, if I say, listen, we're in a fast-moving market, the price has been swinging from, whatever the exchange rate is, it's going up and down in a 10% yo-yo. At that point, it'd be both of our benefits to get a firm quote right away and then lock in on that at that moment. But it's just getting that firm quote at that moment for you.
So both of us will be on CoinMill or something looking at the rate.
Yeah, I mean, this hasn't really been. No one knows what to expect, honestly. And the hard part, there are a lot of currency dealers out there that have been selling this stuff for years. They're just going to get completely backlogged. I mean, it'll be just pandemonium if this thing happens all at once. So that's why we kind of stepped in. And about 4 or 5 years ago, we were like, wait a second. If this thing ever did do what a lot of people are expecting it to do, good luck trying to get a hold of a dealer. And then if it does happen, how do you ship, an exaggerated value back to them and actually insure it? Because most people don't have a third-party policy from Lloyd's of London to ship. We can ship up to $150,000 in one package. I mean, most people don't have that ability to do that. And you can send it through U.S. Postal Service, but you'd have to send it registered. And you can insure up to $50,000 per package. But when you send things registered, it doesn't go like 2-day mail. It goes snail mail. It gets there, but it gets there on its own time frame. So, if the dealer needs it there within 2 days or 3 days, registered mail, you can send it out, but it may take 10 days to get there. You just don't know.
All right.
Right.
Okay. Karen,
Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. James, I see you on here. Go ahead and ask your question.
Yeah, Bob, to be for either one of you, just a question about if we use a private account with Bob Coleman for Bernard that's intended for the CRUT, what's our guarantee that the exchange is within the CRUT?
Okay, good question. The form that's created to be able to identify what to do with that is sent in to Bob. Okay, that's the sales agreement type thing. And on that, it's got the instructions of where it's supposed to be wired to.
So for lack of a better explanation, it's kind of like Worka then. Is that what we're saying?
No.
Well, what I mean is it's still Worka would exchange what we have over there into U.S. dollars and send it to the CRUT account. So isn't that what Bob Coleman is doing?
Okay, I understand. Yes, essentially that's true, except that it's here and not over there.
Right, but it's the same.
Same process.
As the CRUT is concerned, it's still a legal exchange, and it stays within the CRUT.
Yeah, and it stays in a tax-free environment. That's the most important part.
That's the important part. And how are we doing on getting our CRUT documents?
Oh, really well. I did 20 of them this morning.
Well, we talked Monday, and I was supposed to have mine Tuesday, and I don't have it
That's
yet,
because David, not me, man. I got my part done. I gotta say, we have been just locked, and it's just busy. I mean, even David's staying overtime working on mine now, so we know we're behind. But our goal is to get everybody done by the end of this month. I want to get everybody out of here by the end of this month.
I just want to be sure that if I decide to put something in a private account with Bob Coleman, that the exchange stays within the tax-free CRUT environment.
Yep, you got it.
All right, thank you.
All right. Okay, we are at the top of the hour. It's usually where we call it quits. Bob, I want to take just one more moment. Is there anybody that's got one more question that we can do real quickly, and then we'll call us a night? Go ahead. I see somebody showing up here.
Yes, I just want to make sure. This is to Bob Coleman. So we send this package to you by registered mail. Is that my understanding?
Yeah, I mean, for the client standpoint, if you're sending just personal packages, Registered mail is nice because you can actually control the process yourself. You can actually just go to the post office, add registered service to it, and that way you know that it's going to get to its destination, but you at least have insurance on the package. If you wanted to send it FedEx or UPS or that type of thing, you certainly could do that. I don't know if you can get insurance, if they'll ask you what the asset is. Like typically with precious metals, if you tell them it's precious metals, they don't typically insure that. It's too concentrated of a value. But it's just easier with the U.S. Post Office from a logistics standpoint.
Gotcha. Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Good question. All right. Anybody else real quick before we call it a night? All right, cool. Bob, thank you. Thank you,
Sure.
thank you for being here. You did a great job. I knew you would. Now, I'll have this recorded, and we'll make it available to everybody later on this evening. If not, it'll be early in the morning. But I will also put the link in there so you'll be able to go to his website and consider getting things done from that point of view. Also, the cruts are coming, guys. I mean, really are. We're busting them out of here as fast as we can. All right, one more time. Thanks, everybody. We shall see you next time.